I think a lot of people have questions as to and I think this might have to do with scrupulosity, but I think we have to distinguish between a tender conscience, which we should all seek to have, and scrupulosity, which we shouldn't want to be, we don't want to be struggling with. But I mean, sometimes there's that question of things pop into my mind. Sometimes it just starts playing like it's on autoplay, and I don't know when it is that I realize I'm lusting, and then I stop. But just that kind of, that scrupulosity really can drive you wild, because you're like, did I sin? Did I not sin? As opposed to just okay, I give that to the Lord. How do you kind of talk to people about that?
Yeah, I mean, that could be torturous for individuals, because then they start getting scrupulous about the fact that they're scrupulous, and then they're anxious about the fact that they got anxious about being scrupulous about the fact that they were scrupulous. It just becomes this endless loop that just the devil is just having a field day with them. And so I think a priest said it best. I remember he said once that there's a difference between having a bird fly over your head and letting it make a nest in your hair. And so once you realize, okay, I think we're starting to form a nest up there, let's shoo that thing away. Thoughts are going to come, and sexual attraction, sexual desire, sexual urges are not lust. And as long as people think that that's the same thing, you're going to give up so fast to chastity, because you think you're going to be perpetually displeasing God because of how sexually drawn you are to what is sexually appealing. And it's like, oh, I messed up again. Oh, I messed up again. Oh, I saw a girl at the gym who's attractive, and I looked again. Oh, I lost. You're just going to give up. You're just going to throw in the towel. Yeah. And so there needs to be an act of the will to consent. And so there's a difference between seeing and looking. And so, I've seen that person is over there, but do I really need to look over there 24 times in the next 5 minutes? Okay, no, a thought can pass by and we can move forward, but we've got to have a strategy other than just kind of white knuckling it. Nope, I'm not going to look at it, not going to do it. Okay, God, thank you for making her beautiful. You did a good job on that one. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord mighty God. Thank you for her beauty. Move on. And so you're, instead of feeling like you're falling from God constantly, what you're trying to do is you're encountering him in these places of beauty. I saw in the scriptures this morning where it says, the earth is full of your glory. It's let's sit on that for a minute. Heaven and earth are full of your glory. And sometimes you see it. Yesterday, my morning kids woke me up. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Dad, you have to come outside. And I come outside, and it was just glorious. I mean, the cloud was kind of dusty from some dust storm passing through here in Arizona, and the way that the sunrise was pouring through that, the sky was literally gold on this whole side of the backyard. And then on this side, it was a little bit rainy, and it was this dark blue with a rainbow and just this panoramic view. It's the earth is full of his glory, but then also in other human beings. And so I think as we progress in the spiritual life, we can hopefully start to see his glory in human beings instead of seeing them as temptations to hell. They become kind of reminders of the beauty of heaven.
Yeah, for me, practically, because all sorts of strange thoughts and images float through our heads on a regular basis. You're like, where did that? Not even just sexual stuff, just random stuff continually. And you're not weird. That happens to all humans. I think for me, I don't know what you think, is once I'm aware, that's sexual fantasy. Once I have that sort of real cognition, that sober awareness, I think that's when I'm culpable, as it were. It's if I haven't yet become aware of the fact that I'm fantasizing, then I just think to myself, okay, well, we'll just give that to the Lord. But once I become aware, that's what that is, then I feel like I'm obligated to fight it. I don't know. I like these real clear delineating things. They help me anyway. But
you remember one saint saying, let the enemy rage at the gate, let him pound, let him, scream at the gate. As long as you don't consent, and open the door for him, you have not sinned. And so he's going to do some raging and pounding. And like you said, when you become aware, okay, now I'm consciously delighting in this temptation, or I'm deliberately placing myself in a moment of temptation. I think we overlook the power of the Lord's Prayer of lead us not into temptation. I remember I was used to work out at this gym once, and the time that I would work out, there was always this beautiful woman that would come in and work out, not very modestly dressed, and would pray to resist the temptations. And one day I decided, before going to the gym, I'm going to do the Our Father. Lead us not into temptation, blah 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 blah. So I did it, and she wasn't there that day. It was interesting. I did the next day, and she never showed up again. Like, she literally must have quit the gym, moved out of the state, and it was like, and I'm not saying God's got to do that all the time, but it was almost like he was saying to me, like, yeah, like, I honor that prayer, that of like, God, help me not even to be tempted, because I know I'm a weak man. So purity isn't so much like I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger, as it's a greater awareness of our own weakness and dependency upon God.
No, that's totally it. I mean, I sometimes think if I was put in positions where fortitude and chastity were required, I certainly think I would fall a great deal.
Yeah.
You start to realize that, okay, a lot of my victories aren't because I'm He-Man, it's because God is merciful and has prevented me from having these experiences,
Yeah, I mean, you think what he said to the apostles, pray that you may not enter into the test. Like, we don't really want to pray that. We want to go into the test, delight a little bit in the temptation, then heroically overcome it by our own efforts, and be like, look how strong I've become.
Yeah.
So, but that's the path to just perdition of taking that route. It's like, no, we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, hey, you know what? I think I've retained some affection for my sin here. And maybe I need to invite God into that spot where I'm still inordinately attached to the delight of that false consolation, and I need to invite God into that wounded space.
Catholics talk a lot about avoiding the near occasion of sin. What does that mean, and what does it mean in relation to lust?
Well, I think of an anecdote Chris Stefanik once shared with me when he was doing youth ministry back in LA, probably East LA, back like 20 years ago. Some kid in the youth group came up to him and said, "Oh, Chris, man, I feel really bad." He said, I slept with my girlfriend." Chris said, "What happened?" And they said, "Well, I went to her house and her parents weren't there, and then one thing kind of led to another. We slept together, and I just feel really bad." Chris like, "Okay, well, go to confession, and don't go to her house when her parents aren't there." The kid's like, "That's a good point." A week later, knock, knock, knock. The kid's back at the youth ministry office. "Oh, Chris, man, I feel really bad. What happened?" "I went to my girlfriend's house. Parents were there. We had sex again." Chris said, "Look, go to confession, and don't go to her house when her parents aren't there." "That's a good point." Week later, knock, knock, knock. Dude, same thing. And Chris is like, "Dude, when are you going to get it? Like, you're not at a point where you can be alone with this girl and pray a rosary. Like, you've got to avoid, because once you're in the moment of temptation, man, it's hard to say no. It's like this slippery slope, and you're on such a steep decline at that point when you're already aroused. The rational part of your brain is just shut off, and all you're interested in is immediate satisfaction. So if we have the humility to realize, you know what? If I go there, not the best things are going to happen. And so it's a lot easier to lock a burglar out when you see him coming up the driveway instead of him getting like 2 feet inside the door and then you're trying to shove him back out. Nope, here he comes, lock the door. Okay, it's a lot easier to keep him out that way.